primer lugar en el mundo. Recuperando nuestras raíces. Hello. Good evening, Chuempala. Elias Munshya here on TVBAKWEtu. Thank you for joining me on Africa Freedom Day. Africa Freedom Day, which is quite a very, very monumental and important day. Africa Freedom Day. So no matter where you are listening to me from, I would like to welcome you. Please share with as many people as possible. TVBAKWEtu is here. I know this is a little bit late, but we've got to put in some thoughts, even when it is too late. In any case, we can always replay this at an appropriate time. But I wanted to come live on Africa Freedom's Day in order for us to continue casting the story of Africa, the story of Zambia, and the story of our freedom. Because the reason why we have these days of Africa Freedom Day is to remember. Memory is very important. And why we have a yearly reminder of Africa Freedom Day is so that we can be reminded, first of all, of the sacrifices of our fellow Africans, be reminded of the pain, and be reminded of the triumph that Africans did in order to achieve what they achieved. But it's also a way to reframe our outlook, our future, where we want to go, It's very important. That's why we have this Africa Freedom Day as a day to remember, as a day to almost, it's a ritual, ritualistic. It's a ritual to remember. It's a ritual to be reminded of where we are coming from. That's why we have Africa Freedom Day. We as humans, in fact, we need to be reminded because we are very quick to forget. Very, very quick to forget. And it's very terrible because within a generation, you could lose very important memories, memories of how it all happened. That's why we need these days, we need these holidays to remind us constantly of the pain and sacrifice of those that went before us. This is not just an African problem, it's a problem all over the world. The idea of remembrance, the idea of memory, to remember, to commemorate, to gather together in a very formal way to go through the rituals of memory. It's important to remember. The problem with a dictatorship and the problem with corruption and theft, the first thing that it robs you is the ability to remember. That's the first thing that corruption and theft wants to steal away from you. Don't remember. Don't commemorate. Don't be reminded. Start afresh, everything anew. That's a lie, okay? The only person who is able to make everything anew is God, right? God. When this world perishes, and then there is a new heaven and a new earth. Now, born again. When we are born again, we are new. That's it. Other than that, we need to be reminded. The reason why we need to be reminded is that we remember what happened in the past, but secondly, so that we do not repeat the atrocities of yesterday. And so on on Africa Freedom Day today, I do understand that His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, recognized several of our people today in a very, very interesting ceremony where he remembered and tried to recast this day in the collective memories of our people. And one of the people who were honored was Chieftainess Waitwika, also known as Chieftainess Nawaitwika, one of the most consistent royal chiefs in our country. Very, very powerful leader of the Namwanga people, Nawaitwika. So it was very, very wonderful. There are several others who were also honored. One of them is known as Mercy Changwe. Now, Mercy Changwe is a woman who is very interesting because she is one of those who received the beatings at the hand of the Patriotic Front cadres 9 months ago. They beat her up and they assaulted her, and they also stole from the things that she was selling. Her name is Mercy Changwe. It did not happen once. It did not happen twice. It happened several times. But being resilient as she was, she continued putting her store back. And then the Patriotic Front cadres would come back, beat her, and steal from her. And they did not do it once or twice. They kept doing it over and over again. And she continued selling. She continued making it very clear to everybody that she was a member of an opposition political party at that time. Today, the president gave a presidential insignia of honor. It's a very emotional event. The reason why it is emotional is that here is a woman who suffered at the hand of cadres, who was beat and assaulted. You've seen the pictures. And 9 months down the line, there she stands at State House hugging the president. That is an emotional event. It creates a story for our nation. Now, that is what happened to her. But when we take what happened to her to what is happening now, we see that the freedom that Mercy Changwe could not enjoy 9 months ago, citizens of our country today are enjoying those freedoms. They are all over. Beginning from Nakonde down to Mongu, they're enjoying those freedoms. We need to recognize that, and we need to appreciate those efforts. That's why that event to me was extremely important. Now, some people say, let's just forget about it. But if we forget about the atrocities that were just happening 9 months ago, we will be robbed of our desire and power to deal with difficulties that are going to come tomorrow. And so, yes, it is important to be reminded of the pain that we went through as a people. Each and every body in our country that was subject to beatings and assaults, we need to recognize it, and we need not to forget. We need to be reminded and remember the kind of pain that our people were undergoing. We are remembering so that we do not repeat those mistakes tomorrow. We are remembering as a message to the current leadership that they cannot do what Lungu and his group of mafias did. That's why I have insisted in calling past corruption and past theft. Because if we forget and excuse that kind of abuse of our people, it means then that when it is convenient for the current government, they are going to repeat it. But when you, as the citizens of our country, stand up against that kind of abuse, it is sending a very clear message that you are not going to tolerate it if the UPND were, by any chance, to attempt such an abuse of our people. Many are telling me I shouldn't be talking about this because the campaign is over. But memory is not over. Zambia is a going concern. That's why every nation must remember its past, no matter how brutal it was, so that that pain is never repeated. So I have no apologies to make to refer to the previous leader, because he presided over a government that beat our people and assaulted them. It was never acceptable then. It is never acceptable now. Because every body of our citizens is sacred. We cannot be casual about the sacredness of the integrity of the bodies of our people. Because Mercy Changwe's body mattered. And when her blood was spilled in broad daylight, it was a painful experience. And if today she receives an honor, we've got to recognize it. And we've got to apportion blame where it belongs, squarely on the Patriotic Front cadres and its leaders. Some are saying that they feel very disappointed. But how can you be disappointed when I have been extremely consistent in condemning the brutality of the Patriotic Front? It's not something I'm starting now. We stood up to condemn the brutality of the Patriotic Front when they were in power. After they have left power, we still stand very consistent in remembering that those atrocities so that they are never repeated in our country. And it's very easy for us to just say, well, let's just forget about it. And in fact, in my situation, I need to act a little bit more diplomatic. But looking for a job or keeping a job has never been my objective ever in my life. It's been to speak for those that have no voice, to help our people, to believe that Zambia can do better and Zambia will do better. That is my passion. There are several incentives that might be there for me to keep quiet and act diplomatically, but no. If those who assaulted our people are still there and they're trying to launder their approach to the way they governed this country, we have a reason and a duty to respond, because the job is not yet done. We're just 9 months into this new thing, into this new change. We cannot abandon this change. We need to talk about it. We need to keep our people reminded. Because the Patriotic Front is regrouping, and the gentleman, I understand, that's why he still continues to cause confusion in the Patriotic Front, because somehow he's getting deceived that he can come back and continue assaulting our people. And so we can ignore it and say it's not a serious threat, but the Patriotic Front remains a threat to Zambian democracy. It continues to be, first of all, it destroyed Zambia in the past, and then it is still regrouping today in order to continue, to come back and continue assaulting our people. And therefore, I'm calling upon all people of goodwill in our country to make it very clear that the return of the Patriotic Front is completely unacceptable. It's not going to be tolerated. We shouldn't even think about it. Never. In order to come and assault our people once more, those beatings were not enough. More cadre violence. Not anymore. Because we meant it then, and we mean it now. You cannot be assaulting and abusing our people and molesting the sacred bodies of our people, and that's it. And without even saying sorry to that soul that was brutally beaten, some people that were murdered. We do have the issue of Obed Kasongo right now. NDC President Saboy Imboela, she's saying that her member, Obed Kasongo, was beaten. They used machetes. Okumuka Kaula, your fellow citizen. And then they lied Ukobati, he died of malaria. Saboy Imboela is asking, Miss Saboy Imboela is asking, President Saboy Imboela is asking, who dies of malaria in Lusaka? That's what she's saying. Her member, Obed Kasongo. And if we are not serious to punish the killing of Obed Kasongo, we will never be serious to punish any killing that happens after Obed Kasongo. That's it. It is not me. The people who committed atrocities against our people, teine iyo. Nimwe mwaide mukaka ola Obed Kasongo mwaipaya. Na pa autopsy mwabe pati ni malaria ya ipaya. Nimwe mwalide. So, again, let the police carry out their investigations and let the law take its course. If it is because we love our country so much and we don't want anyone to repeat the same things that used to happen in the past. But what happened to Changwe happened to Obed. Remember, Obed Kasongo is not even UPND, NDC. Several other members of political parties beaten in broad daylight, killed in broad daylight, assaulted in broad daylight. And we must remember those atrocities so that we don't repeat them. In Rwanda, balebukisha the genocide every year. Kulaba ka remembrance. Remember. Ama Jews nabo kwali baka remembrance. Na muchipingwemo ka baka remembrance. Bonse mumweve na Kristo like me. Tuwalakwata ka remembrance every Sunday. Do this in remembrance of me. Pakwat mukomfu ifyo chaka di pero na mfuirire. Every week. Do this in remembrance of me. If yalo ama remembrance ekoyaba. We cannot afford to begin forgetting the atrocities. They want you to forget. Now, where then is forgiveness? Of course, forgiveness is there. You've got to forgive. We must forgive. Forgiveness we must. That we should never, ever forget. Never. And if you come at us to say, don't ever remember, the problem is if you tell us to forget and never remember, is that you are preparing yourselves for something even much more worse. Yes, you are. We won't. And so, if there are efforts that are being done at bringing this nation together, healing its divisions, we need to embrace those efforts. One of the key elements of that healing is at least an acknowledgement that the people who beat Changwe, Messi Changwe, are still there, walking very freely. At the very least, we expect the Patriotic Front and its leaders to come and say, yes, we assaulted you, Mercy, and we are asking for mercy. At the very least. It's never about all this pride and pomposity and the excusing of the atrocities that were committed against our people. Those leaders lying amongst themselves that they can still come back and deceive you as the people of Zambia. Never. That's why I'm calling it. May the curse of the Patriotic Front never return to our country. May the curse of Edgar Chagwa Lungu never return to our country. I mean it. May it never return. If it has gone off, may we forgive it. May it never return. May the peace of God prevail over each and every sacred soil of our country. From Chipata to Chidinabombwe. From Milenge to Kajolola. God's peace, where we exist as citizens in a free country. Not in a country where we are being assaulted, beaten, and killed in the hands of those with political power. Never. And I know some of you, my friends that were colleagues in our struggle, you're like, Munshya, you shouldn't talk about this. You should forget about it. No, I'm sorry. We can't. Because the job is not yet done. The election was done, but the job to root out evil in our country, it's never done. It's not yet done. The job to heal our country, the job to completely blacklist the Patriotic Front as a criminal organization is not yet done. The battle is still there. And we believe that with the healing that has prevailed right now over our country, look at this healing. No revenge. President Hakainde Hichilema, he told everybody in the country, no revenge. There shall be peace. There shall be love. The youth leader of the UPND, this is one of the very funny things. The youth leader of the biggest youth cadre of the UPND meets Nagachinda and they are there joking. That is what we voted for. But the idea that we cannot remember the atrocities of the past, no, we will, we shall. And as we do that, we are going to continue forging a unity for this country. Every tribe, every language, every people, every nation in our country, forging together as one. There are transfers of magistrates. I said it yesterday and I'll say it again today. Those transfers are welcome. In fact, what should happen is ama magistrates bamtown bafuire bayako kumushi ero tuwaleta abena mushi basa bako na bena ma magistrates mtown tuwachinja kwa fintu. That is the way to go. The people of Zambia voted for change. It was, of course, political change, but we also want to see change in every sector. So we want to see change that acts positively for our people. So yes, they are welcome. And so let there be a few changes. And so we support the efforts that was done by the Judicial Service Commission to transfer some magistrates from Lusaka, okubatumako kumbi, okubatumako kumushi. Kaingena yoye Zambia. Ni one Zambia, one nation means aba mtauni na boba yako kumushi, elo aba kumushi na boba isa kumukalale. One Zambia, one nation. That is the kind of nation that we are trying to build. That shares equally. In fact, in the CDF, baka in the HM, bari tumanama billions of CDF kumushi. So kanshi kumushi kuriulu pio wingi. So kanshama magistrates ababo magistrate transfer. Bendo mtende, bakonka nyebo kubombere chalo. In fact, I'll be the first one to defend them completely from anyone. As they serve our beautiful country wherever they've been transferred to. Elo nomba bali aba kumushi nabo bese kona vena bomfueko to serve our people in the urban areas. Ifinto kulinganya, umulinganya, fairness, equity, and justice. That is what the judiciary is all about. So we are going to support the judiciary completely, and we're going to support it in the transfers that are taking place because they are very, very important. That's why all of you Zambians, please do not believe in liars and kelenkas that want to bring and cause confusion, telling you that transfer. No, our magistrates are servants of this country and they are willing to work for you anywhere across the country. But in the unlikely event that they don't want to, they can tender in their resignation so that we can hire other new people. The Judicial Service Commission can hire new ones. And we continue subsisting as a beautiful country. But this idea, no people are besotted to a particular region. No, they are not. No, they are our gallant servants of the people, and they are going to serve our country anywhere that they go. Yeah. Echo CDF. Now, we then move to the wider picture of Africa because it's Africa Freedom Day. My proposal is Africa, we need complete change in the way we have looked, first of all, at what we are calling our freedom and what we do about it. Like yesterday, I've got to repeat this today. How come we have so much wealth and yet so poor? What's going on? Our biggest problem is theft and corruption. Africa's biggest existential threat to Africa is theft and corruption. Yesterday, I just called it corruption. Hello, Manjibat, no, call it theft. Theft and corruption. These are the greatest threats to African development. One. The second thing is, who is responsible for this theft and corruption? The biggest problem that we have with Pan-Africanism, the biggest gap that I notice, is the desire to point at the colonialist. And I think there is reason to do so. You know, these multinational companies, they are corrupt. But after we have pointed the finger, we better also look very closely at our own systems of government. That's why for us to insist on a fair party in power, the reason why we politic and engage ourselves in politics, it's because politics matter. Politicians matter. If you elect politicians that are going to steal from you, then they are going to steal from you. Politics cannot be divorced from the way we are going to apportion resources for our countries. This is therefore a call to everybody in Africa, goodwill, people of goodwill and good character, to take over and participate in politics. Because if we do not set the politics straight, and if we do not set our own as a people straight, we're going to continue living in this confusion where we are a very rich continent and yet we can't feed ourselves. It's a shame. Now, this company, Glencore, apparently, in the London courts, they found them guilty of corruption. They corrupted officials in several African countries, Sudan, Cameroon, and Nigeria. And the knee-jerk reaction is to say these multinationals are corruptors and they are wrong. But we need to begin thinking about ourselves. How come we participated, our leaders participated in that corruption? Wouldn't it make a difference if we as the citizens resisted corruption and elected in power governments that are going to fight corruption? Wouldn't it make a difference? Yes, it would. These multinational companies will fear us. They're not going to take advantage of us. Our failure, therefore, is not a failure of these companies. It is the failure of leadership in Africa. That's the big deal. That's why when we are railing against corruption, Edgar Lungu's corruption, the Patriotic Front's corruption, it is because we want to have in State House, in government, a party that is going to fight corruption. When these people come to corrupt us, we're that tuatina abantu bakali bakatudia babish. They will not tolerate corruption. That is what we need in Africa. And we are going to see it grow. But if we are not holding leadership accountable as far as corruption is concerned, these multinational companies are going to come and they're going to corrupt. What happened to the Arabs? What happened to China? I always talk about China. What made China different? Multinational companies, they go to China, they invest. China is one of the biggest recipients of foreign direct investment. What happened? What did they do different? They were serious against corruption. China, waiva, you are dead in China. These multinationals went to China and they started changing because the Chinese, as a people and as a political party, they said no. No to corruption. Zero tolerance. Waiba wafwa. Look at where they are today. The very African countries that are lining up to go and receive Nkongole from the Chinese. Tuleta ntama imwe. Mnaenda freedom tamulefua ya basungu, but nifwe tutantamina ama Chinese ukuya mukupoka kaloba from the Chinese. We never ask them, imamwema Chinese, what did you do differently? How come 1990 you were right at the bottom? 1990. Between 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020, vaamba kokula chita compete with America. What did you do differently? On Africa Freedom's Day, those are the conversations we need to be having. Not surface conversations of anger. We are an independent country, chapa, without dealing with corruption, without dealing with fundamental issues that are going to help develop our country. How come? Today, we have so many Africans in China, so many Africans going to school in China. They come back to Africa. We never ask them the question, how is China? What is China doing differently? We never do. When China was developing, abantu babo, they were all over in the developed nations. China would call them. What you went to this and this school in America. How do they do it? How do they do things? The Chinese diaspora yamboko balondoro ya Chinese atuku if you bachitanifi, if you bakakanifi, if you bapanga cement if you bachitanifi. Knowledge transfer. But no, in Africa, we are not sitting at knowledge transfer, nothing. All we are doing is kuya mukupoka inkongole kuma Chinese. Elo ma Chinese wamibat muya kuba sungu iyo mule isafe kuli ifu pantu vetu wali mitemwa. And yet, ama Chinese naba sungu file umfuana all the time. Nokulaka file laka. You know, that's one of the biggest paradoxes of our time. How? Aba sungu na ma Chinese filaka fedionse every day. Fireraka. Over Taiwan, Fireraka. South China Sea, Fireraka. Over what and what, Fireraka. And yet, they are cooperating economically for the future benefit of both countries. And we as Africa, we are not asking those very important questions. When the Chinese come to us, why aren't we asking those questions? Mugabe at Fiapsa Nanava Sungu, at Mugabe becomes China leaning, Eastern leaning. And he begins sending money to the Chinese. The critical question is, Mugabe napsana na Basungu, but ama Chinese wale umfwana na Basungu, and yet Mugabe goes to the Chinese for everything. We need a complete rewiring of the African story. Anger is not a solution. Anger is not a plan. Ama Chinese, they thought about it. How are we going to do it? Come to China. We are going to make everything for you at very cheap price. That's why Nike bapanga ku China, Apple bapanga ku China, Fiance bapanga ku China. That is the kind of rewiring of our economies. That's what we need. The idea that economic cooperation can happen around the world, economic diplomacy. Okumulelwa, that is the kind of approach that we need over Africa. That idea, that you are fighting, there is nothing like that. An empty stomach has no honor. Then they can engage in anything else. That is perhaps one of the failures of Pan-Africanism today. This idea that ideological arguments are the best thing that we can ever have, without realizing that we need to leverage our resources, our copper. And the first people that must do that leveraging is us ourselves, by refusing corruption, fighting against it, saying no to it, corruption and theft. What would have happened if our country had in power a government that resisted corruption? Vedanta would not have continued with its bad manners. Why did Vedanta continue doing bad manners in Chingola? Why? Those governments, they knew exactly what was going on. They never acted. They were never acting. And even when they say that they acted, they did not act. They just took the resource away in order to steal from it. They exploited the anger of the people without a plan. What we need is a plan, a clear plan for the development of our people. Zambians first, their development first, before any ideological arguments or anything like that. I've seen some comments, so I'm going to read a few comments and then I'm going to close. Mandando's Yamba at Apple is not at Apple is not made in China. Do your research properly. I do have an Apple thing here. This is what it says. Designed by Apple in California, assembled in China. Is that even an argument? All these world-leading companies and brands, Nike is a Western company, but it assembles its products in China. Why? Because the Chinese went to Basungu atimwe iseni mupange fyonse kuno China. 80s, 90s, 2000s, and today they are competing with the West. You see, that is one of the questions we need to interrogate. How come those that have been, I've never been to China, but those that have been to China, they say that when you enter these cities, you see the kind of buildings and development in major cities, major centers, factories, buildings, huge buildings. Okay. Now, how come those companies are building extremely huge things in China? In Lusaka, we contract Chinese and they build ifya madongo. Where is the disconnect? How come? Are you going to say it's the Chinese problem? How come they're building ifyakosa to China? They are sending ifyakosa to Basungu, and then they're bringing Hong Kong, Hong Kong into our country. Who is to blame? Leadership matters. The next level of African leadership is not a leadership that is strong with words. It's a leadership that is strong with action. Strong action for the benefit of our people. That is the next generation of leaders. Leaders that are going to ask, how come Mobutu Sese Seko railed against the Belgians, destroyed the colonial vestiges of Belgian Congo, destroyed their statutes, and yet stole from the Congolese to go and build his houses in Belgium and France? And today, Mobutuism or Mobutu philosophy is one of the leading philosophies of Pan-Africanism. He banned English names. He changed his name from Joseph Mobutu to Mobutu Sese Seko Kukumbendu Wazabanga. And he said that all these biblical or English names are evil. They destroy what is known as authenticity, African authenticity. And yet the gentleman stole Congo's wealth to build mansions in Europe. That is the kind of interrogation we must interrogate ourselves with. In other words, we need to recast the story of the heroism of our African founders. That heroism is not just about the fact that we have this freedom, political freedom, and it ends there. That if they themselves personally benefited economically from that political freedom, then that economic freedom must trickle down to every stomach in Africa. You cannot tell me Robert Gabriel Mugabe, a huge Pan-African hero, died outside the borders of his country, seeking medical help outside the borders of his country. And yet this was a Pan-African hero. No medicine in his own hospital, with a Zimbabwe that is rich with land, rich with diamonds, rich with gold. And he told us, the West, the British are wrong, they're bad, we shouldn't. And yet he was sending money outside of his country to go and die outside the borders of his country. We need to interrogate those important Pan-African questions. Our previous PF president was as long as a Chinese gifted him suits. That's the thing. There is basically no continent if we are not serious against theft and corruption. And the first people to do that are the citizens of our country, to say no to corruption and to hold leaders accountable. That's why for me it's personal. The fight against corruption and theft is personal. It's personal because that is where the development of Africa lies. And before I blame others, I want to look at our own. What are we doing? No more excuses of saying that, no, it's the CIA who assassinated this person and stuff like that. No, not anymore. If you are saying that it's because of foreign interference, then we might as well just disband and whatever. As long as we remain independent countries, we demand more accountability from our leaders. At the very least, we want to see them do the sacrifice right on our soil. Not Mobutu say okwalesho baba sungu, nokukana mashina yabo, nokukana ifyakufuala fyabo. Mobutu wadisa banning anama tie, no tie, cravat, no tie. Every amataya ya fyaba sungu ifile onaula our African culture. Mwakula fuala fye fitenge. Mobutu yo. And yet the gentleman ena aleiva alea mukukula kulia kuino kwa alela ndati kwama satanist. Kwa ale kula ena. There's got to be a new way of recasting the African story, asking deep and important questions. Tekuya fikuma Chinese nangokuya kuma Arabs tuleba tambafi. Kubepusha chadi shani bane Dubai chadi fe chivansa Dubai ifiani fe takwa bane ifiani. It was all whatever it is. Chadi shani. It's inexcusable because to are at the same level as Singapore, as Dubai, as all these countries, at the same level, with same and similar resources. Nigeria is one of the biggest oil producers. Angola, one of the biggest oil producers. A decade later, Arabs, they've developed. They've developed. If we are still lining up to go and receive handouts from China. And that's why in our country, I'm supporting the economic reforms of the New Dawn, of the Nalomango, of the Hichilema Nalomango administration. I'm supporting it because they're using common sense. No somebody how things are going. They're refusing Fidefia Mugabe Fidefia Kuatataba Sungu Babi. No, Why? Abasungu banonkesha China, banonkesha ama-Arabs, banonkesha ama-Easterners, North Korea na Singapore. Elo nomba mugabeism atiyo mkwai abasungu abasha ama-Chinese abene. Let me pela kwa example. Ama-favorites bakwa Mugabe. Ama-Chinese, they are dealing with China, they are dealing n'abasungu every day. Na ifwe bene mbale tumone. Let us see. If you achitika. China itwebe ko how do things go? To somebody there. Not to cover we the only thing is to konkanye pokula tantameni receiving in Congole. Elo bofya ku China ngami kongwesha mupaka fye mukadipire. Takuwa bako na kareka guilt kabazungu kayatuchita. Kubazungu. Kuya kubazungu kubapera guilt ero bamierera. Kwena takwaba. So what we need is a fair world, fair deal for Africans. But the beginning point is for Africans to begin looking and thinking differently about things that affect them. All these narrative, huge, grand scale conspiracies are not going to sustain us anymore. We are tired of conspiracy stories. What we want is to see that we fight corruption and we provide food on the table of our people. That is what we want to see. Because you can continue subjecting yourselves to all these conspiracies, and then what? Nothing. With very huge stories and grandiose ideas of conspiracies. The Chinese did something differently, and we need to learn from them as a continent. That's why, may I propose to the new dawn? Who am I? The new dawn, if they want to listen to me. Next year, when we have that youth symposium, bring all the students that went and studied in China. Engineering, dentists, doctors, whatever. If you went to school in China, you are a youth between 20 and 30 or 35 or whatever it is, mukabalete pamo in Lusaka for a 2-day conference. Elomukete all the heads of parastatal organizations and all the PSs. Symposium. Nokube pushaba baire sambirira ku China. What did they learn? Iwe wasambirira pa engineering. What did you see? Amirondorwera. Iwe you were doing medicine. What did you see? Iwe walesambirira dentistry. What did you see? Iwe walesambirira economics. What did you see? Iwe walesambirira supply chain management. What did you see? We already have the resources. We already do in Zambia right now. We already do. One day, what we can learn within that day can help us restructure our thinking and the way we are doing things. Completely restructure. Isn't it? No, but if we send our students, as long as we're in Zambia, I as a student to China, is a resource. Even the Chinese barrage takaide. Abantu babo, they are all over the world. What did you see? Oh, okay. What I saw is this: to develop your own country. All right. This has been a presentation of TVBAKWETU. Elias Munshya here. Good night. God bless you, and God bless our country.